25 years ago, three former Blizzard developers founded ArenaNet, a studio that from the very beginning placed player friendliness, innovation, and mutual respect at the center of its philosophy. Their goal was to develop an online role-playing game that would not require monthly subscription fees. This idea was completely new and actually quite utopian in the early 2000s. For this nostalgic project, they sought help and, together with Second Wind, a YouTube channel by gaming YouTubers and staff from The Escapist, created this documentary about 25 years of ArenaNet. The documentary provides fascinating insights into 2 decades of MMO development. It also features various icons from the early days, such as Stephen Clark Wilson and Bobby Stein, as well as hardworking contributors who still shape Guild Wars 2 today, like Ruby Bayer or game designer Chloe Mills. At this point, I'd like to give you a short summary of this documentary in case you don't want to watch the entire thing yourself. On the other hand, I really recommend watching it in full. It's very well made and extremely interesting for fans and MMO enthusiasts alike. If you want to watch the documentary yourself, the link is in the video description. Here, I will now give a brief overview and summary of this beautifully made documentary, which not only reveals much about ArenaNet, but also offers insights into the general origins and development processes of online games. At the beginning of the story stands Guild Wars 1, which was initially meant to provide simply an accessible, cooperative gameplay experience. Unlike its major competitor World of Warcraft, it did not rely on endless level progression, but on horizontal progression. Players were meant to reach the maximum level quickly, then focus on skills, builds, and cooperation. The world's art style was intentionally artistic and stylized to create a distinctive experience. When the game could be tested early at E3, it immediately became well known, and the positive feedback from players encouraged the young ArenaNet studio. The success led ArenaNet to develop several major expansions in a short amount of time, including Factions, Nightfall, and Eye of the North. But this rapid release pace created tremendous production pressure, something the still young studio handled remarkably well, showing how committed and bold they were. At the same time, a notably friendly and helpful community developed, one that still characterizes Guild Wars to this day. It is not a given that game communities are friendly. Especially in older games with many veterans and longtime players, newcomers are often met with unfriendliness or even hostility. Veterans also must sometimes team up with beginners, which can lead to frustration if newcomers don't yet understand certain mechanics. Unfortunately, in many communities, this leads veterans to treat beginners poorly. Guild Wars, however, managed to maintain friendliness and helpfulness in the community, despite the cooperative elements required, something quite unique in the modern online world. After the great success of Guild Wars 1 and its continued development, ArenaNet eventually realized that the game's technical and gameplay foundations would reach their limits in the long term. So the team began thinking about a successor, a new generation. From this process, Guild Wars 2 was born, a game meant to fundamentally modernize the series. Instead of classic quests, the developers focused on dynamic events meant to feel alive. Encounters with other players should bring joy, not frustration. The open world became more interactive, vertical, and narratively integrated. Compared to other MMOs, this was a refreshingly new approach. In familiar games, players often competed with each other for quest items, resources, or enemies. You couldn't turn in a quest because someone else had taken the objective. The mobs you needed were already looted by others. Guild Wars 2 aimed to eliminate this frustration entirely. The launch of Guild Wars 2 in 2012 was a huge success. Demand was so high that sales had to be temporarily paused. Again, this showed how strongly the community supported the studio. Later, ArenaNet attempted the living world concept, an episodic TV series-like narrative that continuously advanced the game world. This experiment was creative but financially challenging, and the studio eventually returned to traditional expansions, resulting in Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, and End of Dragons. ArenaNet found that delivering constant new content in a short TV-style cadence does not work well for an MMO because players quickly consume the content and then have nothing new to do unless additional systems exist. Therefore, they return to a classic expansion model. The development of Guild Wars 2 is still based on close collaboration among all departments. This is not a given if you look at large studios like Blizzard, where Diablo 3 and Diablo 4 were developed under the same roof, yet seemingly without communication between teams. That means mistakes and lessons learned are not shared effectively. ArenaNet appears to handle this much better. Of course, ArenaNet is far smaller than Blizzard. Ideas at ArenaNet often arise not just from designers but from artists and developers themselves who collaboratively shape concepts. One example is the giant dragon Kralkatorrik, whose creation took many months of cooperative work. The developers emphasize how important the community is. Especially in difficult times, such as the pandemic, the community was a strong source of support for the dev team. The community not only helps new players, but also organizes charity events, and overall contributes to making Guild Wars 2 one of the friendliest MMOs today. Currently, ArenaNet releases a new expansion every year, split into several parts. This structure gives the team stability and gives players a clear idea of what to expect. This is also how new features like housing came about because players wanted a home interior. Future expansions will offer new regions, stories, and technical ideas without losing the series' roots. At the end of the documentary, the developers emphasize again that Guild Wars 2 is not just a game but a world, similar to World of Warcraft, which has been maintained for decades. ArenaNet aims to continue taking risks, trying new things, and making bold decisions. For ArenaNet itself, the story of Guild Wars is far from over. The next years are meant to be just as creative and meaningful as the first. How far Guild Wars will evolve remains exciting, especially since Guild Wars 3 has already been announced. The transition from Guild Wars 2 to Guild Wars 3 will be fascinating. Keeping decades-long veterans while attracting new players may be ArenaNet's biggest future challenge. I found this look back at the last 25 years of Guild Wars 2 very exciting, and I'm already looking forward to the future, and hopefully another 25 years, presumably then with Guild Wars 3. Do you still play Guild Wars, either the first or the second part? Or have you perhaps tried Guild Wars Reforged and jumped back into the series from scratch? Let me know. And until then, I wish you a wonderful day.